Good morning. Today is
very simple to me. Yeah.
Thursday, Tu B'Shvat, Rosh Hashanah Leilonis, Tavshin Ayin Daled. We're in Teres Menachem Sefer Mamorim, Tavshin Yud Aleph, Tavshin Yud Beis, and the Mamar of Shabbos Pashas Mishpatim, Pashas Shkolim, Mevorchem Achelish Oder, Tavshin Yud Beis, Dibur HaMaschil Sihiye Meshakeiloh Va'akoro Ba'artzecha. We are on page Reish Tes Zayin. And we are one, two, three, four, five, six, 7, 8, 9 lines from the bottom. At the beginning of the line, the word v'yesera. So the Rebbe is discussing over here the concept of Avodas Hashem, man's service of Hashem, and whether it is meaningful or meaningless from the perspective of Hashem. We find contradictions in the sources of our sages, whether man's service of Hashem is meaningful. And the Rebbe here is beginning to reconcile these seemingly contradictory statements. He starts first by explaining the Kabbalistic answer, and that is based on what the Avodas HaKodesh, one of the early Mekubalim, the early Kabbalists, says concerning this matter. He actually discusses it. And he said, the Avodas HaKodesh says, that so far as the singular master, the source of all sources, he doesn't care about man's service. And from that point of view, the purpose of serving Hashem is to refine those that serve Hashem, to refine the created beings. However, so from the perspective of the glory, and in order to bestow flow on the supernal heads, to unite the beginning of the thought with the end, serving Hashem is absolutely vital. Meaning to say that there is a level of godliness, as the Rebbe explains it, from whose perspective, from the perspective of that level of godliness, man's service of Hashem is meaningless. And there's a level of godliness where man's service of Hashem is meaningful. Not only from the perspective of the created being that serves Hashem, not only because of the refinement that it causes within the server, as it were, the servant, but rather also it has an impact on the godliness, that level of godliness. And generally speaking, the Rebbe said this is the difference between godliness as it is vested in Seder Hishtalshalus, godliness as it is vested within the chain order of creation, where necessarily that level of godliness has a relationship with creation and created beings, and therefore, by definition, the actions of the created beings have an impact on the divine energy that is related to that realm, whereas the levels of godliness which are beyond Seder Shtalshalus, beyond the chain order of creation, man's service of Hashem has no impact there. In the chain order of creation, as we know, there are oires and kelim. There are vessels, receptors, and divine energies, divine lights. And the Rebbe explained that the impact of Avodas Hashem, man's service of Hashem, is not only on the kelim, not only the vessels, but also on the divine energies that are vested within the kelim. So when the Avodas HaKodesh says that La'ashpia ala roshim elyonim, to bestow the flow on the supernal heads, that's a reference to Keser, Chochmah, and Bina. Those are already levels that are related to Seder Shtalshalus. L'yached Reish HaMachshava B'Seifa, to unite the beginning of the thought, which is Hashem's thought process in creation, which is actualized B'Seifa in the end, which means in the actual creation. So in that context, Avodas Hashem is meaningful and relevant. And the Rebbe explained that so far as the Kelim are concerned, the vessels are concerned, it's easier to understand that man's actions and service has an impact, has meaning. What about the Oyer, the divine light? So the Rebbe explained that since through the lack of man's service of Hashem, if there's a deficiency in man's service of Hashem, he causes a blemish in the vessel, which in turn causes the oir, the divine energy that's vested within the vessel, to depart. So although that does not cause a blemish in the oir itself, however, it doesn't allow the oir to fulfill the purpose for which it came into being, and therefore it has an impact on it. And that's where we're up to. The Yisedim is 9 lines from the bottom. Page Reish Design. In addition to this, in addition to the fact that through the deficiency in man's service of Hashem, it causes the divine energy to depart from the vessel, from the receptor, and therefore doesn't allow it to fulfill its mission. And in that context, it has a man's service or lack of service has an impact on the divine energy. In addition to this point, not only that, but rather man's service of Hashem and his lack of doing so has an impact and affects also the divine energy, which is beyond being clothed in vessels, beyond being vested in the receptors. Why? Shaharei Gam ha'er shelamayla mehislapshus bekelim, also the divine energy which is beyond vesting itself in the actual vessels. Harei hu sheirish hakaponim le'er hamislapish bekelim. It is at least a source for the divine energy which will clothe itself in the receptors and in the vessels. So going back to the expression of the Avodas HaKodesh, so let's see how the Rebbe defines it. Vizehu, and this is the explanation. She'inyan ha'avodah negei b'bchinas arich. This explains why man's service of Hashem has meaning also so far as the dimension of arich, the external aspect of the crown of Keser. Man's service of Hashem has an impact over there, is meaningful there. Why? Kibchinas arich, because this level of arich, the external dimension of the crown of Keser, who shoyrish l'ne'atzolim, is a root for those that will be emanated in the realm of Atzilus, in the world of emanation. And since in the realm of the emanated, in the world of Atzilus, man's service of Hashem is meaningful, doesn't make an impact as mentioned before. Why? Because we're already talking about a realm that is made up of the 10 spheres, the 10 divine attributes of Seder Shtalshalos, the chain order of creation. Therefore, in the root of those to be emanated, which is Bechinas Arich, and the external dimension of the crown of Keser, Negei in an Aveda, man's service of Hashem is meaningful. Because as we learned before, the dimension of the Keser, of the crown, has two aspects to it. It's got Atik, which is the higher dimension, the inner dimension of Keser, which is related to the emanator, to Ein Sof, right? And then there's the dimension of Keser as it relates to those to be emanated, is the root of those to follow, which is Arich, the external dimension of Keser. So the external dimension of Keser is already related to what? To Netzolim, to those to be emanated, and it is already a root for them. Therefore, if Avodah, man's service of Hashem, is meaningful so far as Seder Shtalshalos is concerned, it must be meaningful also so far as the root of Seder Shtalshalos is concerned, which is the dimension of Arich. Hold on a second. So that is the Roshim Ha'elyonim. So the supernal heads that is referred to in Avodas HaKodesh is Keser, Chochma, and Bina. The three heads, if you will, of the entire Seder Shtalshalos. So where is Avodas Hashem not meaningful?
Just Keser. Why are you including Chochma and Bina?
He says Roshim Ha'elyonim. It's a general. It's a phrase. He's not going into the details of why Keser Chochma Bina, but
he says Chochma Bina.
No, he doesn't say over here Keser. He says before he starts with Chochma. At the top of the page he says Chochma, starting from Chochma, which is the beginning of Shtalshalos. It's Reishis. Over here it says Roshim Elyonim. In another place it says the three supernal heads. But we're talking, the heads means the beginning of Seder Shtalshalos and everything that follows from it. So Chochma, of course, is the beginning of Seder Shtalshalos.
Arich and Chochma.
So you go Chochma, and even beyond Chochma, the level of Arich, which is the source of Seder Shtalshalos. It's only in the level of Atik, the inner dimension of Keser, the inner dimension of the crown, Omru Razal. It is in reference to that our sages say, and what does it matter to him, etc. Meaning to say that there, in the level of Arich, so far as Atik, so far as the internal dimension of Keser, of the crown, man's service of Hashem is not meaningful. Why? Ki bechinas atik, because the aspect of atik, which is the internal dimension of the crown of Keser, who odoin yachid sheresh hasharoshim, that is the reference, that is the meaning of the Avodas HaKodesh saying the singular master, the root of the roots. Sheresh hasharoshim daike. Atik is the root of the roots, right? Why? It's not the root of those to be emanated. Why? Atik is beyond being a root to those that'll be emanated. Because it is a root to what? To Arich, to the external dimension of Keser. And the external dimension of Keser is the root of the Netzalim. So what is Arich? The internal dimension of Keser? It's the root of the roots from which the emanated follow. Now that Rebbe adds, not only is it a root of the roots, and therefore by definition it would seem, it sounds as if Atik has a close relationship to Arich. The internal dimension of Keser has a close relationship to the external dimension of Keser, says the Rebbe no. That the relationship between the Atik, the internal dimension of Keser, and Arich, the external dimension of Keser, is a distant one. It is distant even from Arich. Atik is distant even from Arich, which makes it even less associated with man's service of Hashem. And in truth, in truth, Arich is even removed, is distant and separate, also from the roots, meaning from what? From the level of Arich, the external dimension of Keser. What does Atik mean? The word Atik is from the expression Vayatik. The verse in Parshas Lech Lecha says that when Avraham Avinu moved, it says Vayatik. I think it was Avraham Avinu. Was it him or late? But it says Vayatik misham hahara. He moved himself from there to the mountain. Vayatik. So Atik means removed, separate. Vahainu, what does it mean separate? Separate from what? Not only is it removed from the Netzalim, from those to be emanated, it's removed from Seder Shtalshalos, it's even removed from the root of the Seder Shtalshalos. It's even removed from Arich, from the external dimension of Keser. So why is it called Sheresh HaSharoshim? If it's removed even from the sources, why is it called the source of the sources? Says the Rebbe, it's a borrowed term. The reason why it is called the root of the roots, it's only a borrowed name. But in truth, it's even removed from the sharoshim, from the roots. And so far as this aspect of godliness is concerned, man's service of Hashem is not meaningful. And it's concerning this level of godliness that the verse states, if you sinned, what can you effect within him? And if your misdeeds are in abundance, what are you doing to him? And if you're righteous, what are you contributing to him? So in short, so far as Avodas HaKodesh is concerned, and as the Rebbe explains it, how do we reconcile the contradiction in the sources of Chazal, of the sages, concerning Avodas Hashem, man's service of Hashem, whether it's meaningful or meaningless? So it depends. If we're talking about levels that are related to Seder Shtalshalos, the chain order of creation, as the Rebbe explained at length, then man's service of Hashem is meaningful, so far as godliness is concerned. So far as the Getach is concerned. If we're talking about levels of godliness that are beyond Seder Shtalshalos, that are beyond the chain order of creation, Avodas Hashem is meaningless. Should we carry on a couple of lines?
Yeah.
Huh? Chapter Gimel, top of page of Eshut Zayin. Omnam, however, now the Rebbe says, fine, that's okay, but there are indications in the pasuk in the verses that seem to imply that Avodas Hashem is meaningful even, service of Hashem is meaningful even in the levels that are beyond the Shtalshalos. So therefore, we're still left wanting, we're still left with the question. Omnam, however, Adayin Tzarech Lavin, we still need to understand. Because that which the verse states, that you shall serve Hashem, your God, this is a reference not only to the levels of the chain order of creation, where, as explained above, man's service of Hashem is meaningful. Elagam, this verse also refers, refers and relates also to the levels, to a level which is beyond the chain order of creation. Where do we see this in the verse? Well, we need to first preface the the emphasis and the choice of language, b'lashon hakosov, that the verse chooses, sheyesh be'stirim ereishel sefer. In the language that the verse states that we're based on which this Maimon is based, there seems to be a contradiction from the beginning of the verse to the end of the verse. What's the contradiction? The betchila in the beginning of the verse, Omer, the verse states, "Va'avadetem es havaya lekechem u'beirach gomer," and you shall serve Hashem your God, and He will bless your water and your bread, etc., etc. Beloshen nister kishlish medaber. It's a concealed expression, meaning to say, it's in the third person. You will serve Hashem your God, and He will bless you. Right? So there's you, there's Hashem, and then there's the one that's communicating this message. And then the verse carries on, in the direct expression. First person. As if he's speaking on his own. So there's a contradiction. The explanation is Al Pi Mashakos Varambam, based on that which Nachmanides writes back the Mosa the Pirush al Torah in his introduction to his commentary on the Torah. Shelekosav Moshe Rabbeinu HaTorah Dalas Farim Rishonim Ki Medaber Ba'ad Atzmei. When Moshe Rabbeinu, when Moses wrote the Torah, the first 4 books of the Torah, we're not talking about the 5th book, Dvorim, because Dvorim is actually Moshe Rabbeinu's, if you will, last will and testament. It's what he said on the day he passed away. So it's actually Moshe Rabbeinu speaking, that I spoke and I went up and so on and so forth. But in the first 4 books, whenever it refers to Moshe Rabbeinu speaking or Moshe Rabbeinu being spoken to, he didn't write the Torah in a way that he is saying that Hashem spoke to me and I transmitted it to you. It says that Hashem spoke to Moshe, speak to the Jewish people, etc., right? So in the first 4 books, it is Kishlish HaMedaber, it's in the third person. Hainu Ki'ilu. What does that mean? It's as if it's as if neither Shem Havaya is speaking or Moshe is speaking. But it's rather like there's a third party, a third entity that's communicating the conversation that took place, the discussion that took place between Hashem and Moshe. Continue Mitzvah tomorrow.